Politicians don't use overheads. They don't know how to use them. Thanks for the offer, though. And you called me more quickly than I expected. So I have 3 versions of my speech, and I have to make sure I give the right one. No, I'm joking. Just give me a moment. But first of all, thank you very much for inviting me to be here this afternoon. I think this is a really important, very timely exercise. And if you would just talk amongst yourselves for a moment so I can make sure that I do. Yes. Okay. It's a very important seminar. The issues are of critical moment, I think. I think that the launch today of the Reuters Institute Digital News Report for Ireland is, provides obviously a context for the deliberations here. I'd like to thank and congratulate those of you who are involved in that initiative. I'm just sitting beside Jane Souter, so I'll thank her, but I know there are others involved as well. Had an opportunity to read her piece in the paper this morning, which I thought was extremely engaging and informative. I want to also acknowledge the BAI's role in ensuring that this rich data on Ireland has been made available to us for the first time. I want to commend DCU's Institute for Future Media and Journalism on the report and congratulate you on today's formal launch of FuJo. Is that the correct pronunciation? FuJo. Okay, I've been asked to talk for a few minutes about the media merger guidelines, and as signalled also by Marie, and it's great to be sharing the stage with Marie, as always. I thank her for all of her work and her scholarship over many years in this area. It's worth recognising that and thanking her for it. The media merger guidelines, as you know, were adopted by government at Cabinet 3 weeks ago. They were prepared, as Marie has reminded us, under the Competition and Consumer Protection Act 2014. One of the things, and perhaps there will be some debate on the content of the guidelines in the course of the discussion, but one of the things that struck me as most extraordinary in the last few weeks is the assumption there was in some quarters, or the treatment of the guidelines as if they constituted law. The law is what's in the Act of 2014. The guidelines are important because they set out how I or a minister, whoever the minister is, would approach and would deal with an application in respect of a merger. But don't be looking to the guidelines to change the law. The law goes into the statute, and the basic statute that we're dealing with here is the Consumer Protection Act 2014, as Marie has said. That act significantly enhances the regulation of media mergers in Ireland by introducing for the first time a requirement to consider the impact of a proposed merger on media plurality. It gives the Minister for Communications the responsibility to determine whether a proposed media merger is in the public interest in terms of media plurality. And it gives the Minister the power to prevent a merger that does not pass the public interest test. This is in addition to the existing responsibility of the competition authorities to regulate the effect of mergers, including media mergers, on competition. The government has taken these steps because we believe that the protection of media plurality is essential to the health of our democracy. In future, media mergers will be subjected to a public value test, which will examine their impact, their prospect or their potential impact on the editorial independence of the media business concerned, the diversity of content, sources and voices in the media, and issues such as the breakdown of market share. The guidelines set out the procedures to be followed when a media merger is proposed, and they give information about what the Minister will take into account when he or she is assessing whether a merger would or would not be in the public interest. The guidelines give citizens and the industry clarity over who is required to give notification of a merger, the notification process, and how mergers, as I say, will be assessed. The document says that if a media merger is proposed, the Minister must consider the holding or voting strength that each party holds in any other media business, be it broadcast, print, or digital. The term significant interest is used to measure an owner's holding or voting strength. It is defined as sufficient voting, financial or ownership strength, quote, to influence directly or indirectly, to an appreciable extent, the direction of policy of the media business or media businesses with regard in particular to news, current affairs or cultural content," unquote. The guidelines say that a holding or voting strength of between 10 and 19% in a media business may constitute a significant interest. And they say that a holding or voting strength of 20% or over 20% will generally constitute a significant interest. In short, the Minister will be more likely to determine that a merger is against or contrary to the public interest if the company or individual that seeks to acquire a media company already has a significant interest in another media business. Although it has been, I think, broadly welcomed, this important new protection of media diversity has been subject to some criticism, primarily on the grounds that it is long overdue or that it lacks a retrospective element. It is true that the current government is the first to legislate to protect diversity in media ownership and guard against further concentration of media power. I think you can make the argument that previous administrations could have taken action on media concentration in the past. However, I don't accept that it is realistic to expect retrospective legislation that can, as it were, unpick the existing ownership structure of this or any other industry. The recent legislation and subsequent guidelines are designed to guard against excessive media concentration in the future. They are necessary and they will be effective. And there is plenty of scope for further media mergers and acquisitions in this jurisdiction. For example, there has been a lot of speculation recently about the possible sale of a major Irish television station. Should this speculation turn out to be well-founded, it would be just one example of the potential that still exists for significant restructuring of the media ownership landscape. Under the new guidelines, media mergers or proposed mergers will be assessed on a case-by-case basis. There's a 4-phase process. If the businesses involved meet the relevant thresholds, the merger will first be brought to the Competition and Consumer Protection Commission. It will conduct an examination from a competition perspective. If a media merger is approved by the CCPC on competition grounds, we then move to the second phase. The proposal will have to be notified to my department, where officials would make an initial examination. This will examine the effect of the merger on media plurality in the state and will conclude with a recommendation being made to the Minister. The Minister will consider the recommendation and could allow the merger to proceed, with certain conditions, or could refer the merger to the Broadcasting Authority of Ireland for what's called a full examination. At this third stage, should it arise, the BAI's expertise would be supplemented by an advisory panel which would include experts in print or digital media as appropriate and as necessary. The BAI examination would then be submitted to the Minister. We would enter then the fourth and decisive phase, where the Minister would decide whether to allow the merger to proceed, allow it to proceed with conditions, or refuse permission for the merger to proceed. These are the various steps, practical steps that would arise in circumstances where a proposal is made for a media merger. Can I conclude just these opening remarks? I look forward to being present for some discussion. That while I think media ownership and the plurality issue is an extremely important issue, it may not be the most urgent challenge facing the sector, particularly in view of some of the issues that are, I'm probably distracting people by hitting the computer here, but the display behind me. But anyway, maybe it's more interesting, I don't know. There are issues of enormous importance, I think, in the report that you've published today, as I say, that was outlined in some detail in Jane's op-ed this morning. I think many of those issues are at least as important, if not more so, in terms of, no one wants to talk about a sort of hierarchy of importance of issues. All of these issues are important. Our media are operating in an era of constant adjustment to new technologies, to changing media consumption habits, cultural shifts, and new business models. These developments are, I think, fundamentally challenging the industry's practices and potentially its position in society. The trends are very much reflected in the research findings that have been presented here this afternoon, and which will inform current and future analysis about how journalism might evolve. Ireland has a strong tradition of independent journalism. I believe it will thrive, not just survive, so long as it remains alive to the changing demands of the society in which it operates. From the government's point of view, we are committed to sustaining a diverse Irish broadcasting sector, including a strong public service broadcaster, capable of delivering services that serve all our citizens' needs and tastes. We are determined to preserve media plurality that is so essential to our democracy. And I firmly believe that the new media merger guidelines, together with the legislation enacted last year, will help us to do this. Thank you very much for your attention.